When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Skims or Allbirds, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and great marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling and for shoppers buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. It's home of Shop Pay, the #1 checkout in the world. You can use it to boost conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going through to checkout. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/income.
Hi everyone, I'm Deb Flashenberg. Welcome to Yoga, Birth, Babies, a podcast produced by Prenatal Yoga Center. We will be diving into everything prenatal yoga, birth, and baby related, hoping to inspire, educate, and empower you through your journey into motherhood. Thank you for listening.
Hi, I'm Deb Flashenberg, and I'm your host of Yoga Birth Babies. And today we're continuing our series I call From the Vault. We're going to revisit one of our most popular parenting episodes, and it's about tantrums. Because let's be honest, tantrums are something nearly every parent encounters, and they can leave even the calmest amongst us feeling exhausted and overwhelmed. If you've ever wondered what's actually happening in your child's brain during a tantrum, or why some transitions seem to trigger big emotions, or how you can help your child regulate without losing your own mind and keeping cool in the process, this episode is for you. In this conversation, I speak with neuroscientist Dr. Cindy Hovington about the science behind tantrums and emotional regulation. I love science. I love evidence-based information. So this is totally up my alley because she offers practical evidence-based tools to help parents better understand their child's behavior, set realistic expectations, and navigate challenging moments with more confidence and compassion and a bit of ease. So whether you're in the thick of toddlerhood or simply want a deeper understanding of your child's development, I think you're going to find a lot from this podcast episode really helpful. Now, before we jump into my conversation with Cindy, let me just tell you a little bit about my guest. So Dr. Cindy Covington, PhD, is a mom of 3 and the founder of Curious Neuron, a parenting resource that is backed by science. Her goal is to make science accessible and digestible for parents to help them make informed decisions about their child's development. You can follow Curious Neuron on Instagram and wherever else you are hanging out on social media. You're going to get a lot from this podcast, and I'm really excited for you to do so. Now, before we get to my conversation with Cindy, I always love to give you some updates about Prenatal Yoga Center. So head to our website, prenatalyogacenter.com. Now, from there, you can check out so much. I have a blog that has hundreds of blog entries. Again, I love researching, so they're evidence-backed. And all our past podcasts, of course, almost 500 of them. And then, of course, our schedule for our in-person classes, our online classes. We've got workshops galore, both in person and on demand. And then we have a really in-depth PYC method prenatal yoga teacher training. So if you thought, wow, I really want to understand the method and support the pregnant person, check out our teacher training. It's deep, it's passionate, it is encompassing, and I'm incredibly proud of it. So check all that out. And then I do have a favor to ask of you, our listener. If you can take a moment to leave a rating and review for the podcast, it's going to help us get into more ears and expand our community. And I do these podcast episodes, not just because I'm a big learning geek, because I really believe this information can be supportive. So it's just our way of supporting the community. And the bigger we get, the more support we can offer. So thanks for your help in doing so. Okay, we're going to take a super quick break. We come back. Let's talk tantrums.
Good sleep is everything. That's why Ollie's Science Back Support is made with a blend of melatonin and L-theanine for both kiddos and grown-ups. So when your mind won't switch off, you've got something that can help. Your racing thoughts and restless nights won't stand a chance. Find Ollie Sleep Solutions for the whole family at ollie.com. That's OLLY.com.
Hi, Cindy. How are you?
Hi, I'm well. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm a little stuffy, as we talked about earlier. And I'm full transparency for the wonderful community. Cindy and I have now, I think we had 2 or 3 different reschedules. So I'm like, okay, if I have to blow my nose, I blow my nose. If I'm a little stuffy, I'm stuffy, but I'm not rescheduling. So
that was me last week. I totally get it.
Yeah, so I'm just really excited. So thanks for putting up with my slightly clogged sound. But I'm so excited to have this conversation with you because when I heard you in a different podcast and then I kind of took a deep dive, and I've been following you on Instagram for a while, I love what you cover. I love evidence-based. So I'm such a geek. This is going to be so exciting.
Oh, we're going to geek it out.
Yay!
Science is my thing, and I love breaking down science for parents to make it simple and for them to understand their child a bit better. So yeah, we're going to have a good talk.
I mean, science behind a tantrum. Yes.
Exactly.
Let's go there. So I guess before we jump into it, I would love to learn a little bit more about you and what inspired the curious neuron.
My kids. So going back, I have a PhD in neuroscience. So I studied mental health and how it impacts our cognitive skills and our emotional skills. So that's where the whole background comes in. And then I went into my postdoctoral training and I went into education to understand how the brain learns. And I then got pregnant and I left. I decided to leave academia, and I had during my PhD I had volunteered for this program called Brain Reach, which allowed us graduate students to kind of go into classrooms, grade 3 classrooms in secondary 2 or grade 8 or 9, I think, and we would talk about the brain and how it functions. And although like I'm really happy I have a PhD, but that sort of volunteer experience is what led me to science communication and that passion to take science and to make it digestible for everybody. And what led to Curious Neuron is when I became a parent and I had left academia and said, I'm able to go and look up some research studies and decide and use that to inform my parenting decisions. But most people can't do that. You don't have the access, or somebody might have access to it, but it takes time to break it down and to read it and to understand it. So I started doing that for fun as a blog, curiousneuron.com. That kind of blew up when Janet Lansbury shared one of my articles, and then she's an author, a parenting author, and then
yes, she's been on the podcast. She's fantastic.
She's amazing. And so it helped my blog get some traction. And then that led to Instagram. I decided to try to get the word out. That led to the podcast and now courses and one-on-ones. And yeah, so that's how Curious Neuron was formed.
I bet you had no idea when you left academia to parent and then start studying this for yourself where this would lead to.
No, I had no idea. I also, I think this is like Curious Neuron 5.0. I'm not sure where we're at anymore because, being pregnant and then looking up the studies, you think, even if you read the studies, once you become a parent and you start applying it, you're like, oh, I had no idea how to parent. Or like I had this vision of being a parent, and now just to tell you, like I was translating research studies that only focused on child development, because I was like, if a parent understands their child's brain development, then they'll be able to handle anything. That was when my child was like younger than 18 months. Then my firstborn was 18 months, between 18 and 24 months, and tantrums started. And I was like, well, even if I know everything about emotion regulation skills, why can't I help her? And why am I losing my mind? and that's when I realized that there's a whole psychology behind emotion regulation skills and us, and how my past, and how I was parented and my own issues played into my child's tantrums. And that's when I realized, okay, I need to change what Curious Neuron is. So now it's sort of like a balance between, I say, if you want to thrive as a parent, you need to first nurture yourself, then your child, and then each other, because that community aspect is really important too.
I love that.
It evolved.
And I also just really appreciate the honesty that you could study something and then it makes sense intellectually, but then when you're there, you can step back and be like, all right, I know the data says this, but the reality says this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm always trying to be as transparent as possible, because we have, like, you can't, even if I give you all the skills, you can apply it every day. The same way that I can, because there's a day that you might be overly stressed because of work, or you might have had an argument with your spouse, and you're not going to control your emotions. So, we're going to get into all of that with today's topic, but we have to be honest with ourselves. Like, perfection doesn't really apply to parenting.
It lives in a vacuum. Yes. Yeah. So let's jump right in. So let's go into tantrums. Mm-hmm. So let's try to understand what's happening in a child's brain during a tantrum. Because I know when my son, who tends to have more tantrums than my daughter, when he has a tantrum, there is no reasoning, just none.
Yeah. How old is he?
Oh, he's 10. So I should say.
But still. No, it's great. The reason why I want to bring that up is because it evolves, right? So let's start with a young child, a toddler, and what's happening in their brain is, well, let's take an example so we can bring up this example when we're talking. But if a child is trying to fall asleep and all of a sudden they want some chocolate and you're like, well, that's not going to happen. Cue the tantrum. Obviously there's a tantrum because you said no and they're disappointed. So there's a lot going inside that child's brain because it's a bunch of networks that have to work for that. So the first one is the amygdala, which is the part of the brain that's involved in emotion. So saying no to receiving chocolate is disappointing and frustrating. So the child will have that big emotion. But then that part of the brain speaks to the frontal lobe, which is right behind your forehead. And that part of the brain kind of regulates the emotion. So that part of the brain will say, the amygdala will say, okay, what do I do with this big emotion? I'm frustrated. And the frontal part of the brain has to tell you what to do with that. The problem is, in a 2-year-old and in a 10-year-old and in a 15 or 20-year-old, that part of the brain, the frontal lobe, which is the one that decides what to do with that emotion, isn't developed yet. It develops until we're about between 21 and 25. So if we have a small child and we're expecting them to know what to do with all these big emotions, it's impossible. They don't know what to do with those emotions. That frontal part of the brain has to keep developing to know what to do with those, big emotions like frustration and disappointment. So I hope by the end of this that a parent understands, like, it's a process. It's a very big process, and emotion regulation skills are skills. It's partly obviously temperament, very small percentage, but in that there are neural circuits that are involved, like I said, like the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. But then there's also the skill part, and we're going to, dive deep into that because we play a big part of that.
Oh, I'm excited. I'm excited to hear that. So we were just talking about the 2-year-old, the 10-year-old, the 15, the 20-year-old, although I have to say I've seen some adults have temper tantrums too.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So what are realistic expectations parents should have at these different milestones and ages? Cause again, like a 2-year-old's not going to self-regulate. They don't have those skills that a 9 or 15 does.
No. So at that small age, I think that's the hardest because sometimes we place expectations on these children, thinking like, why are you crying? I gave you exactly what you wanted. You asked for the blue cup. I gave it to you and now you're having a tantrum. So it's hard for us to understand that, right? Because it's not part of our world. A colleague asks us for a pen and we give it to them. They don't start crying and have a tantrum. So it's kind of out of our norm. But we have to understand that we have to first model what emotion regulation skills look like. But again, even if we talk about all of that, but I think your question was, what can we expect from them? So at that young age, we can't expect them to regulate any part of their emotions. Their brain is developing and they haven't learned the skill yet. As they're getting older, closer to starting school, there are cognitive skills that are developing. The attention part of the brain, the impulsivity is decreasing around that time. So early elementary school, you're not going to see tantrums the same way that you see a tantrum in a 2-year-old, obviously. And if you do, then it's a sign that there might be a bigger issue. But not just an outburst, right? Like I'm talking about like a tantrum or a meltdown that lasts for, 30, 40 minutes. They're usually signs that we need to speak to our doctor. So, around 10, 15 years old, they're going to get disappointed. They might have big emotions, but they're going to have control of their emotions a little bit more. And as the research talks about, like, teenagers being able to control their emotions, but also control their behaviors a little bit more, not fully, but a little bit more. So as you're looking at early 20s, now nobody's going to have a tantrum, but they are going to have big emotions, that are mostly controlled. So it evolves as they get older. It's when you look at the emotion regulation skills in older kids or young adults, they're looking mostly at the reward system. So what happens when you involve like a gambling task, and you say, well, if you do this, you can win this much money. If you do that, you could win even more. That's part of emotion regulation skills, because they're trying to control themselves from being impulsive or reacting for the reward, because that reward pathway of the brain is involved in emotion regulation skills.
So as you said, I was thinking about the parents that are listening to this, but as you said, like the 2-year-old, they don't have the skills. Mm-hmm. So I'm imagining some parents that are like, well, I have a 2-year-old, so what do I do? So is it basically just hold a safe space and ride it out?
Yeah. So emotion regulation skills begin at birth. All the way back to birth, because attachment plays a huge part in how a child regulates their emotions. So I know that this is there's a lot of talk around this. Even within my family, when I had my firstborn, if my child was crying, I would go towards her and take her and hold her, and they'd be like, no, don't do that. She needs to become independent. You need to let her, grow out of this, like, wanting you for something. And knowing the science, I was like, no, I'm going to hold this boundary, and that's I'm responding to her needs. And I think that's still a conversation that happens in society. So responding to them, what happens is that when a baby is crying and you respond to them, you are regulating their brain. So you are acting as their frontal lobe. And as you keep doing that, the child realizes, okay, I was scared, or there was a need that I had, and I reacted by crying. But all of a sudden now my stress system was calmed because mom or dad was there, or a caregiver was there to calm me down. As we keep helping them with this system, as they grow older, they will start gaining a bit more control. Around 2 or 3 years old, all of a sudden now, they're able to start saying, well, okay, I'm in fear right now, but I won't cry. Like, I'll be able to, they might still cry, and that's okay, but they're going to be able to bring it down a lot faster than a child who had an attachment issue at birth.
So by attachment issue, meaning someone that did not comfort the baby that was crying.
Yeah. Yeah, and if a parent is listening, I don't want you to worry if, like, you had to go to the bathroom and you're letting your child cry. That's not what's going to form like an attachment issue. This is when there's neglect, when children are often left there.
So take your shower. It's okay if they cry for a few moments. But.
Yes, that's okay. And I know we could probably get into the whole research or talk about sleep, but that's a whole other topic. And to be honest, the research is not very clear. So I know some parents might be saying, what if I let my child cry it out? For me, when it comes to that issue, I'll just say, like, you have to do what works for you and your family. But if you do look at the research, I would tend to go more towards the comforting. But yeah. So anyways, yes, attachment is a big role in it. So the child starts to develop their social emotional parts of the brain because you are very warm and responsive towards them. As they become toddlers, now there's this whole set of behaviors in the parenting literature. They call them like parent emotion socialization. And there are 3 really important things that have a huge impact on how a child develops their emotion regulation skills. There's observing and modeling. So what they're seeing us do in their environment. And I always tell parents that it's really good for you to talk out loud when you're feeling a certain emotion. I'm so happy because, grandma just called and they're coming over. Or, oh no, I thought I had eggs in the fridge. I'm so disappointed. Just expressing the emotion that you have, because they're watching and they're listening. And that is helping them form a sort of model of how to regulate their own emotions. So they're observing you. Also in the car, road rage. Again, it's okay if it happens once in a blue moon, but if they're seeing you constantly getting angry and yelling at people around in their environment, they're registering this, and that's helping them develop their social emotional skills. So that's the first part of this model that they have in literature, observing and modeling. The second one is parenting practices and behavior. And that has to do with, there's a lot of parenting behaviors, but let's just put them all into two categories. And parenting behaviors that help a child thrive when it comes to social emotional skills are warmth, so being responsive and sensitive towards their needs, and boundaries. Children need boundaries, and that plays into their social emotional, like their emotion regulation skills. So, again, it goes back to a child crying, having a tantrum. If we look at a young age, telling the child, to like stop crying or ignoring it, it's not really going to help them in the long run. Again, if we've had a rough day and this is like the 10th tantrum of the day and we also have a newborn, it's okay to have to take your space and have your own boundary and step away to regulate yourself. But when you look at the big picture, it's really important that we do practice being warm and responsive towards our child, but also setting boundaries. And the third one is emotional climate of the family. So that's another difficult one sometimes, because let's just say we have a toddler. So I have 3 kids, 2, 4, and 6 years old. And so twice in my life, I've had a newborn and a toddler, which was really tough. But so what happens is that, it could happen that you are yelling a bit more, or even the couple within the home is arguing more because you're tired. You have a newborn and you also have a toddler who's having tantrums. So what's important is that we try our best to regulate our own emotions in our child's environment, because the emotional climate is part of that model that contributes to our child's emotion regulation skills.
I'm really enjoying this. I also feel guilty at times. I'm like, oh, I know I've yelled too much at times. But then I always try to recognize that. Does that help when an adult or a parent can say, Mommy or Daddy yelled, I'm sorry, I know that might have scared you. You didn't do anything wrong. Just try to explaining it to them. Does that help?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
That's a huge part of it, right? So arguing is not a bad thing. It's how you argue, right? So if you're respecting the person that you're arguing with, or if you're just kind of like name calling and yelling and there's no repair after that. So the same thing applies with our kids. Whether we yelled at them because we just had an outburst, by saying sorry and explaining that you had an outburst, it kind of normalizes their own outburst, right? Like we can't expect them to never have an emotional outburst. That would be rational, because we have some too, with family members, with friends, with colleagues, with our kids. So I think it's really important that we do take that moment to repair and to say, I overreacted, or I yelled, I'm tired, or, I had things on my mind. And
I just laugh because it happens at our house so much. Like the idea that they have to take a shower, you think that this never happens, but every single day there's an argument of who takes a shower first. Every single day. And every now and then I'm like, someone just get upstairs. Like I just get so fed up, and then I'm sorry. But
but that's okay. Those are the parenting moments, it's always the big picture, right? So if we're never in control of our emotions, then that's what we're modeling. But that's the frustration, right, of the moment. And if I get it, I totally get it. With 3 kids now, they're almost always arguing for toys. They always want the same toy. Whoever grabs it, the other 2 want it.
Oh, I'm sure.
So it's hard, to sometimes it's just like, just stop it. But then you do have moments where you have to kind of like step back and provide skills. And this is a whole other conversation, but every single time a toddler or a young child is having a tantrum, mostly in the young ages, it's kind of like a cry for help. It's their way of saying, I don't know, I'm frustrated right now and I don't know what to do with it. Or I was playing with my sibling and they took a toy away from me and I have no idea how to respond to that. I think it's important that as parents, we look at these situations, and even with older kids, we should look at these situations with like curiosity first. Right? Why are they doing this? Why did they act this way? Why are they behaving this way? And then compassion, because their brain is still developing. So they might not know what to do. And by saying no to a toddler who keeps climbing a couch or the stairs when we don't want them to, they don't know what the yes is. Right. So Same thing with older kids. If they're playing with toys and we just keep saying, share, 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 Or no, don't do that. No, don't do that. What is the skill we want them to have? The skill is sharing. So provide steps to that. Provide a dialogue or a conversation that they should be having so that they can follow this and start implementing it. With older kids, I don't know, the shower, I'm not sure. I'm not at that level yet. But if there's something, a schedule or something that could be implemented, what is the skill that we have to
That's the
offer?
hilarious thing is because it is literally the same schedule every day. And
oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
6:30, here it is. Like you've never thought, as if it's never come around. So that kind of brings me up to transitions. So we're going to take a super quick break. When we come back, I know some kids, especially little kids, can have a hard time transitioning from one activity to the other, and some kids don't. So let's talk about transitions. We'll be right back.
Experience a membership that backs your business journey with American Express Business Platinum. Earn 5 times membership rewards points on flights and prepaid hotels booked on AmexTravel.com. Plus, apply to find out your welcome offer, which could be as high as 300,000 membership rewards points. American Express Business Platinum. There's nothing like it. Terms apply. Welcome offers vary, and you may not be eligible for an offer. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-platinum.
At REI Co-op, we've got the gear that makes camp easy. A tent that sets up in seconds. A chair you could fall asleep in. A cooler that keeps things chill. So you can get to the good stuff. Late night laughs, endless stars, and stories you'll tell again and again. REI Co-op. Camp solved. Shop in-store or at rei.com.
All right. So can we talk about tantrums, that some kids have a harder time transitioning from one situation to the other? So how can parents help the child have an easier time with transitions?
I love that you're bringing that up because often when I'm working with parents, I tell them, I can't just give you like a bunch of skills for your child. I need to understand the environment first. So you need to understand it too. Start by, if your child is having tantrums very often, take a notebook and start writing down like when it's happening, what triggered it. And transitions is often one that pops up with parents. That and language skills, like if they don't have the language to communicate something that they want or need or whatever it is. But with the transition, it's okay to, let's talk about leaving the park or leaving a family member's house. It's okay to offer your child a bit of, some negotiation or negotiate with them, right? So you could say, we have to leave in 10 minutes. Start giving a warning. And if they're young, you can have a visual for them, like a red light, green light, yellow light sort of thing red, yellow, green, where you say, okay, it's yellow now. We have 5 minutes left. And when you say green, it's something that will help them understand, okay, that means I have to go. And also if you're at the park, for instance, it's okay to say, what do you want to do before we leave? Give them a bit of that power, not power, but that ability to say, I have a role in this, right? So you can say, what would you like to do? Would you like to go down the slide 3 more times? Or would you like to play on the monkey bars and go, do it across like 2 times or whatever it is? Especially with young kids, be very specific. If by them choosing, it helps transitions a little bit more, because transitions are really hard for them. Negotiation is a good thing.
We've started to do it. My husband, actually, he's a therapist. So years ago, he heard from someone or read somewhere about giving them options. Like, okay, we have to leave. Do you want to leave in 5 minutes or 10 minutes? Knowing, of course, they're going to say 10. But then they feel like they made a choice in the matter. And that did help with a lot. So we've tried to do the choice thing. And then, of course, this negotiation. What about 15 minutes?
Yeah. And that's where the boundaries comes in, right? So the warmth and the boundaries thing that I was talking about before, it's okay to say, I know you're having fun. I see that you love the park, or I know that it's hard for you to leave Grandma and Grandpa's house because it's really fun being here. That's the warmth. And then the conversation leads into the boundaries, but we have to go. It's bedtime and we have to go home now. Or it's dinner time and we have to leave the park because I have to prepare dinner and for whatever reason, we have to be there at that time. So you hold your boundary. You gave them an option. You showed them that you see them. You see that they're not resisting, but they don't really want to leave. You get that. But here's the boundary and we need to leave. So you have your 5 or 10 minutes and then we go. Same thing when it's bedtime or bath time and children, all of a sudden want to eat again. That's my kids. I'm just describing them. All of a sudden it's like an hour after dinner and they're like, I'm so hungry. I need to eat now. Or it's like, no, I'm having a lot of fun playing and I want to stop. And, they've been playing the same game, whatever, for 3 hours. It's okay for you to say, I know that you like that. And it's showing that compassion part too, right? But the rule is it's 6:30 or 7:00 or whatever time, and you need to take your bath now. So what would you like to do for the next 5 or 10 minutes? Do you want to continue playing? Do you want to grab a quick bite? But in 5 or 10 minutes, whatever they decide, we're going upstairs.
Does it help with the validating? Like, I recognize you're disappointed. I don't even know if that makes sense to a 2-year-old. Is that something a 2-year-old would get? Like, recognizing, I see you're sad by this, but we have to do X, Y, and Z.
Yep. It does, because it goes back into the circuitry that's involved in emotion regulation skills. So I mentioned the amygdala, which is the emotions part of the brain. But in that, tied to that is the reward system of the brain, which the amygdala and it's called the ventral striatum, they talk together. So if your child is feeling good and feeling rewarded during that sort of big emotion, and all of a sudden, mommy or daddy are there and they're kind of like making me feel good and I got an option, then I'm going to repeat that behavior in the sense that when they give me an option, I'll choose and then I'll go upstairs to take my bath, because it's all part of how they're learning how to regulate their emotions. So yes, it's really important.
So this kind of ties in. I feel like we might have answered this, but my next question is, what are some ways parents can help their child learn to emotionally regulate? So what you said, like modeling and boundaries.
Yeah, so there's a big part, right? The 3 steps that were in research, so observing and modeling, their parenting practices, which is warmth and boundaries, and then the emotional climate of the family. But even more important than this model is yourself. So I always tell parents we need to nurture ourselves first before we can nurture our child. And it's true. It sounds cliche, but it's true. Because a lot of the research shows how much of a role we have as a parent. So if a parent is listening and saying, I wish, my child could regulate their emotions, but then they're thinking back to the past 3 days and realizing that whenever their child has a big emotion, they have a big emotion. Well, then that's part of the modeling
too. Yeah,
exactly. And for me, after I had my second child, after I gave birth to my third child, I had 3 very young kids in the house, and I thought I had things under control until then. But that's when everything just kind of flew out the window. I lost complete control of my own emotions. All of my past came rushing back into my mind in terms of how I was raised. So I was raised more with only boundaries and no warmth. I was raised by a single parent, so my mom would often say, I'm the mom and the dad, I'm not your friend. What I say goes, and that's it. And it's I think a big majority of us were raised that way in the 80s. And it's not that it's entirely bad, but if you think back to the parenting styles that really help a child thrive and develop their own emotional regulation skills, there has to be a warmth involved in that. So what happened is that when I had my third child, I lost complete control of my emotions because I wasn't mentally well. And once I started getting control of that, went to therapy and started working on that, again, knowing all the research. And then I didn't even know in the moment that I wasn't doing well. But then once I got a control of that, then things started changing. I started developing skills for myself to regulate my emotions, because there are skills we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about some skills in a second, I'm sure, some more skills, but there's this cycle of emotion regulation skills where if you as an adult, if you were parented in a way where skills were not offered to you, social emotional skills were not offered to you, or there was childhood maltreatment, or there was neglect or a form of abuse when you were young, then your brain that's involved in social emotional skills, including emotion regulation skills, wasn't developed the same way as somebody who didn't live through that. And then that means that that person didn't learn how to control their emotions, and then we become parents, and then we pass on these emotion, the lack of emotion regulation skills. and then we don't give our child that skill, and then that continues the cycle. So I think I had posted about this on Instagram this week or last week, but to break that cycle, it starts from us. We have to work on ourselves, through therapy or books or self-help books, but we have to learn how to control our emotions first, or else our kids won't develop those skills.
Right. No, first of all, I'm so appreciative that you're so transparent and open with your own struggles, because I think it actually helps others here. As I'll just put myself in this position, here you are with a PhD in this, and you're you're like, I knew the data and I still had issues. I think when we can see somebody in that role saying, I needed help, it gives the rest of us who do not have a PhD in this particular topic say, okay, if that person needs help and they have this background, it's okay for me to say, I could use some help too. So I'm just appreciative that you're opening yourself up, and offering that. I think that's really fantastic. And that also brings into recognizing, it's funny, I'm actually doing a podcast in the next couple of days about shame and parenting. And I don't want us to feel like we have to carry shame about our children's behavior, but we do play a role, like our own behavior does play a role. Can you talk a little more about that?
Yeah. I love that they're talking about the shame part too, because, I always worry when I give all this information out and I talk to parents, because then sometimes some of them will think back and be like, oh no, like, what did I do? Did I mess up my child?
Oh, I'm thinking that already. And I'm like, good, I have the podcast about shame coming up. That can help. That's going to help me.
Start the conversation. But no, I don't want to do that. I obviously my role is to take the science and translate it so that all parents, any parent, you don't have to have a science background, so that you can understand it and then take what works best from your family, from what I'm saying, and apply it. If you're looking back and realizing, I wasn't doing that with my child, the best part is that our child's brain is super highly plastic and can learn anything, right? So if you didn't develop an attachment, I talk to parents who realize only in retrospect that they had postpartum depression, or a dad that had postpartum depression and that had no idea that that dads can have that, or a parent who experienced neglect and never dealt with it. So all of that, it's never too late to start working on yourself, and it's also never too late to start working on your relationship with your parent. I'm sure, and I could speak about myself too, having a father who left and just never looked back, if somebody were to come back into my life and say like, hey, let's work on this, I don't think there are many of us out there that would say like, wow, you care enough to like come speak to me or to repair this. So it's never too late. That's all I want to say for that part. Sorry to digress.
No, this is great.
I really don't want parents to feel bad about everything. But yes, sorry, your question was about the
role of the parents' behavior and how that affects the ability of a child to emotionally regulate.
Yeah. So like I said before, it has a huge role. It really has the most important role, especially in young kids who are learning through their environment, which is us, how to regulate their emotions. So a parent does have to be mindful about how they're responding to their child's emotions. And like I said, and be compassionate as well, because it's coming from a place of not knowing how to do it. And they have to learn this. There's something called cognitive reappraisal, in the literature, and it's a strategy that parents could use. Let's take an example of two 7-year-olds that were playing soccer and they lost the game. We can say little Jacob and Michael, and Jacob's dad picks him up from the soccer game and he sees that they lost and he's upset, and he places his arm around Jacob and says, I could see how much it's affecting you, like I could see that you're sad. I'm really sorry. But let's, I was looking at your game and you guys actually played really well today. And then little Jacob thinks about it and says, it's true, I tried my best. And then the conversation goes around that. So that's called reappraising the emotional situation. It's not just about like taking their mind off the fact that they're sad. There's a warmth, right? The father is connecting with him. But there's a reappraisal of the situation, which is activating again that reward pathway, right? So looking for something to make him feel like better, good, without ignoring the situation. You're not trying to push it away. So that's one strategy that a parent can use. And then the opposite of that is a parent who suppresses the child's emotion, which is, let's say little Michael, his dad comes to pick him up and Michael's sad and his father's like, why are you sad? And he's, well, I lost and, I'm really upset about it. He's like, oh, come on, don't be a baby. It's just a game. Come on, let's get in the car and go home. So there's a big difference.
That's invalidating, and that could feel crappy, I bet. Yeah.
So, but this happens, and that's why I want to talk about these two situations, because the same thing could happen with a child who is having a tantrum. And like I said before, sometimes they have tantrums, right, for something they actually asked for something and we gave it to them, and then they start crying, and it's hard for us to understand, and it's easy for us to go towards why are you crying? I gave you the blue cup. Just stop crying. I gave it to you. Stop whining. Stop crying. Let's move on. But I wanted to highlight the two differences in these strategies. And these are all strategies that they talk about in research. And parents who tend to go towards the cognitive reappraisal strategy have children who develop greater skills in emotion regulation skills. And that applies to how they build relationships when they're in school and how they reappraise situations when they're adults as well. Going back to your adults that have tantrums, that's part of it. They might not have learned the right skills. And there are tons of adults who struggle with this.
Yes, I've seen many, and I was like, okay,
I believe you.
All right. What suggestions do you have for parents staying calm during a tantrum?
That's hard. It could be hard sometimes, right? Because we could be really tired. We could have had a really rough day. But the biggest, there's a lot that we could do, but I think for me, what really helped was to pause between your child's action and your reaction. Create a pause. However long you need, they will still be there crying if they're having a tantrum or upset or having whatever big emotion if they're older. Take a pause and first start with calming yourself down. So it's okay to say in your mind, and I hope you try this. Like if you're listening, if somebody's listening and they're like, is this going to work? Yes, please try this tomorrow. As soon as your child has this big emotion or tantrum, pause and talk about how you're feeling in your mind, but don't use I, use your name. So Cindy's really overwhelmed right now. Cindy is tired, didn't sleep, and this is the fourth tantrum and it's only 9 a.m. Just say that in your mind. and then move towards your child. Little Billy is having a tantrum because his sister took his toy again, the third time this morning. It's not even 9 a.m. She took it 3 times and he's frustrated. I get it. So all of a sudden, the compassion comes in a bit more easily because you realize, they have a reason to have a tantrum. And now they need me. Now I need to be their prefrontal cortex and get down there, show the warmth and help them. I know it took us 3 minutes to go through it, but it takes just a few seconds when you get used to doing this. And it really helps to help your child.
Oh, I like that. I'm going to try that next time it happens because I know it's going to happen. I might feel a little foolish. Deb is feeling overwhelmed. Deb wishes they would stop shrieking.
And the changing because we usually say I'm super frustrated right now, right? Why did I do that? Why did I say that? And that kind of feeds into our negative self-talk, our inner voice. There's a book called Chatter by the author Ethan Kross, and he's a researcher, and he studies inner voice, and he gives 25 tips in his book. This is just one of them, but 25 different ways that we can change how we speak to ourselves in our mind. And by changing the way that we speak to ourselves in our mind, then we become more compassionate towards ourselves. That's a whole other part of it, self-compassion. That really, once you start working on that, then you realize, because it's easy to, sometimes in a really big moment, you're in the car and I'll just give an example of myself. All 3 kids are crying and you just think it's the worst day ever. And this is the hardest thing to do. But when you start working on your self-compassion, you're okay, they're having a rough time. I'm having a rough time. Other parents are having rough times right now. It's just a moment. This is another tip that Ethan Kross gives in his book. It's just a moment. So your child's having a tantrum and there are certain things that trigger me personally. And that's another thing, being aware of your own triggers. For me, I didn't know until I became a parent. I'm really sensitive to sounds, a lot of noise by the end of the day to me sets off my own emotions. just a fork falling at dinner time. I know that I'm in my zone of being triggered very easily, and that could set me off for no reason. But the more aware we are of ourselves and what triggers us and our own needs and all of that, then things get easier when our child has a tantrum, because we're able to say, okay, this is just a moment, it'll pass. Or he had a rough day, it's going to pass. Or I'm not well, I'm helping a grandmother who's sick. I'm really stressed and that's on my mind. It's okay that I just yelled, or I need to step away. I need to, set my boundary, whatever it is. But we really need to work on ourselves that way. There's so much that we can do, and it really, truly helps our child with their emotions as well.
Yeah, and I'm going to actually get that book. So the tantrum is passed, and so now we're post-tantrum. So, yay, it's done. It's wound down. So what are some ways a parent can understand what triggered it? Maybe we don't need to understand, but how can we help our child recover from the tantrum?
Yeah, so, okay, depends on the age. Right after first of all, during a tantrum, it's okay to step back. Let's not give skills during tantrums. Let's allow that emotion to happen and to pass. And then, like you said, after the tantrum, that's where all the skill building does happen. That's where all the warmth and the connection with your child happens. And a boundary, if you have to, if a child hit or hurt a sibling or a friend, all of that happens after. And during the tantrum, we can show that we're connecting with them to help decrease the emotion. We can say, I'm here if you want me to hold you, and just stay there. Or some kids want to be hugged. Some kids, you can place your hand on their shoulder. With my kids, I would always get down at their level. So even if they don't want me to be near them, I would get down at their level so that I could have eye contact, and that's how we connect with them. After that, then depending on your child's age, if you're able to have a conversation with them, go ahead, talk about the emotion. When everything is done and gone, right? The moment has passed. It's okay to revisit, and actually really good to revisit, because that's when those cognitive skills are going to come in of reassessing, you had a really big emotion around the fact that I said no. It's okay to be disappointed sometimes, but to cry and scream as if you were hurt, that's kind of confusing, because, that's not the level of crying and screaming. It's okay when you're disappointed to say, like, I'm really frustrated. I really wanted it. It's okay to walk away. It's okay to whatever you want to set in your own home. But give them the skills at that point. And with younger kids, you could have a sort of calming corner, to walk over to and have sensory things that they can squish with their hand, a soft blanket of some sort, something they can shake, like a little plastic bottle that you put rice inside, anything sensory that helps calm their system, because our amygdala is connected to our sensory system, the brain. So a sense, like a sound or a sight, could trigger a tantrum. If you think of kids coming back from daycare or school, sometimes that hour right after is really hard. And it could be because their system is already on being overwhelmed. So it's good to have like calming sort of activities after. But the same thing to calm the system right after they're like at their peak and they start coming down their peak of their tantrum. It's okay to bring them to their calming corner and say, let's take some time to relax.
I love that idea, the calming corner. So you kind of touched on this earlier, but when might a parent get concerned about tantrums?
Yeah, it's if a tantrum is, sometimes they refer to them as meltdowns in the literature, and meltdowns are a bit more severe, and so they last longer. They can last like 30 minutes. And it's very often in neurodivergent kids, children with ADHD or who are autistic, sorry. So if it's lasting very long, if it's happening many times in a day, like 10 times a day.
Oh my God, that sounds, I feel for that parent. I really do.
Exactly.
My son has ADHD, so we've had some meltdowns, but I could not imagine 10 a day.
Yeah.
Like I would need a lot of self-care.
And sometimes they're very long at the same time. So, if they're having many tantrums in a day, if it's affecting the family environment, where you are at your wit's end, you just don't know what to do anymore. Your emotions, you're not sleeping, you're stressed, your emotions are off. I would recommend that a parent speaks to their doctor. And sometimes when it comes to this, I've heard of parents who have come to me because it's been dismissed by their doctor. If you feel that something is off with your child, stick to it, bring it back to your doctor, or try to get, just try to speak to a psychologist or even an occupational therapist. They do help with emotion regulation skills. And I know here, I'm from Canada, and we have neuropsychologists, and they help as well. Basically the duration of it and the frequency.
And what about age? Like, is this like, is a 2-year-old more expected to have a long meltdown tantrum? Yes. Okay. I don't want the parents that are like, oh my gosh, my 2-year-old had like 5 meltdowns today, to be like, okay, let's get to the doctor. Like,
so if the 5 meltdowns were short, right? Just disappointed, and that's it. You gave them what they wanted, or you set your boundary, and then 5 minutes later they're done with it. That's fine. But if at a very young age the tantrums they're very long, then let's say like I said, like half an hour, and they're not able to function, and you can't help them. Anything you do is not going to help minimize or bring the emotions down. Even if your child is around 3 years old, then I would speak to your doctor about it. With the older kids, if you're having those very long tantrums and they're happening very often, and by older child, I mean like around 5 years old, then again, I would speak to your doctor.
Thank you. I think that's really helpful. All right, we're going to take one more break, but when we come back, now you can answer this from any of the many hats you wear. What is one final tip or piece of advice you'd like to offer new or expectant parents? We'll be right back.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Listening to this podcast instead of doom scrolling? Smart move. Another smart move? Getting help from one of State Farm's 19,000 local agents when you choose to bundle home and auto. Bundling, just another way to save with the Personal Price Plan. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.
Okay, so you could do it from your scientist hat. You can do it from your mom hat, whatever you want.
I'm not sure. I love that. I think I even had a post where I had like a scientist and then a mom, and I answered a certain question from both. I'm using
how different were those answers? I bet they were very different.
I can't remember what the post is about right now. I just remember the image, but they were different because sometimes, you like I said before at the beginning, you know the research and you're like, this is what I'm going to do. And then you become a parent and you're like, I did it and it didn't work. Or because it didn't work for me. I wasn't able to implement it that way, or it didn't work because my child is different. And that's why I tell parents that I really recommend that they take notes and observe their child's behavior, because it helps you understand your child. When I work with parents, I literally take time to assess the whole situation. The parent has to take a lot of notes because you can't help your child unless you're understanding what's going on. That's what's hard as a neuroscientist and a mom. I really have to see what works for my child. And I think we should all do that, though. We should all wear the neuroscientist hat sometimes too.
So perfect. So was there a specific tip or piece of advice you want to offer?
Okay. Yeah. So a specific tip for emotion regulation skills. It's a lot, because it's hard to answer that, because as I said, throughout this whole conversation, it's a whole orchestra of things that play into how our child develops their emotion regulation skills. So we're looking at the environment, which is the home environment, the caregiver, how we control their emotions, and then how their brain is developing. So it comes with age and the development of their brain and the prefrontal cortex. So I think for me, the biggest take home that I've learned as a mom, as my kids are getting older, and also from what I see in the science, is my own role. And I know this could be the hardest thing, but the more work that we put into ourselves, not dismissing, whatever we're going through or whatever we've been through, if we don't work on ourselves, then we're going to have trouble helping our child. And there's nothing, we can't change that. We really, really do need to work on ourselves. We don't necessarily have to see a therapist if you can't afford it. Sometimes I speak to parents who can't. There are lots of great self-help books that are out there that we can read and try to work on our emotion regulation skills. There are workbooks as well. There's one called the Mindful-Based Emotional balance workbook. I can give you links to that if you want, but they're all books that are written by psychologists that you can work on your, at home. And it's really the most important piece to the puzzle.
I 100% agree.
Yeah.
Where can people, it really is the hardest. I constantly am stepping back and examining myself, my mental state, my relationship with my husband, knowing that impacts my family, I take it very seriously. So I do appreciate hearing you say that. So where can people find your work?
They can visit the website at curiousneuron.com. They can follow me on Instagram at curious_neuron. They can listen to the podcast, the Curious Neuron podcast. It's on iTunes and Spotify and all of those platforms. And also every first Monday of the month, I give a free webinar. I say webinar / parenting support group because basically this webinar is broken down into 3 parts. The first part, 10-15 minutes, we talk about parental mental health, where I go through workbooks that I have. I give the parents a little homework that they could work on that week or that month, And then the second part is whatever the workshop is about. It could be about this month was about emotional regulation skills. In December, we're talking about toys and play and toys that help support your child's development. So every month it's a different topic. And then at the end, it's a place where parents can open up, and it's really beautiful to see how important it is for parents to feel that they're not alone and to feel seen. Same way that our child wants to feel seen, us as adults want to feel seen. And we might think that we're going through something that no one else is, but we really are not alone, and it really helps to talk to parents about things that we're experiencing. So there's that. Yeah.
Can I have the link for that as well and put it on the show notes?
I will. Yeah.
I think that's really helpful. What a great service you offer. You really do put yourself out there, and I appreciate all of this great, juicy knowledge. And I think it's going to give a lot of parents, myself included, really stuff to think about. And really, I think it's going to, at least I'll speak for myself, I think it's going to remind me to check my frustration and how, because I'm not going to say, I'm not going to be frustrated because that's just silly, but
exactly. No, but it's true.
But I think it's going to just be that reminder that I need every now and then that I can have emotions and then use it as a teachable moment for myself and my kids.
I hope that that's a takeaway, from the parents. I don't want parents to feel bad when they have a bad day or a rough day. It's okay. We're all human, including our kids. So they're going to need our help, and they're going to have bad days and bad moments. But I think that when we lead with curiosity and compassion, and whether it's the relationship we have with our kids or with our spouse, the more I follow this as sort of a life mantra, even with my friends, when somebody says something, instead of responding quickly and getting upset about it, the curiosity comes in first.
Yes.
and
I love
and
that.
Then you understand that behavior, whether it's your child or that response that a partner had or a friend had, where it's coming from. And then the compassion part comes in, and you might say, yeah, I did say that, and I didn't mean it that way, and I'm sorry if it hurt you. Instead of just saying why would you say that? And it really helps with our kids too.
Oh, this has been such a great conversation. It didn't matter how many times we had to reschedule. We got to it, and it was so good.
I'm so glad. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you.
This has been an episode of Yoga Birth Babies, produced by Prenatal Yoga Center. You can catch us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Periscope. I'm Deb Flaschenberg. Thanks for listening.
Hey there, it's Wayfair here, where delivery and setup are as easy as a few taps on your phone. You're relaxing in an old hammock, scrolling Wayfair's app, when you spot it, a brand new patio set. Next thing you know, Wayfair delivers it right to your patio and sets it up. Oh, you need a new grill too? All right, Wayfair's got you covered. With Wayfair's room of choice delivery and fast expert setup on qualifying orders, life gets a little easier. Visit wayfair.com or the Wayfair app.
Wayfair, every style, every home.